Hello, hello, my girlie. Welcome to Talks with Sae, the only late night, thought-provoking, giggle-inducing lifestyle and girl talk podcast for my ladies whose days melt into their nights. I'm Zahra, your tulip-loving, heels-obsessed host who, just like you, is trying to figure it all out while finding moments of balance, discipline, and self above else. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Talks with Sae and turn on your notifications so you don't miss an episode. So tonight, girlie, I really want us to get real about a topic that seemingly is still an issue for us, and that's aging. We're all at different stages in life, but one thing I've noticed since I was a little girl is the pressure, promotion, and just downright unnecessary focus on us aging. It's like aging for women is deemed as something nasty, even until this day. And so that brings me to introducing our special guest of the evening, Dr. Maya Cameron. I am going to give her the floor as she introduces herself. Welcome, Dr. Cameron.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here. You can feel free to call me Maya, or my students call me Dr. Maya. You're right. The whole concept of aging, and particularly for women of color, more specifically for Black women, aging is almost vilified, so it is particularly important for I at 53 am still learning and am committed to building that internal fortitude to get through this time. My body is changing, but also the way I'm perceived is also changing.
But actually, before we do dive into all things aging, Maya, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Raised in San Diego, but grew up in DC. I was there for 25 years. I earned my PhD at Howard University in sociology. Social inequalities, race, class, and gender, and urban sociology. I have been an educator for 35 plus years, and my real love within education is equity and inclusion.
Thank you for your wonderful introduction, Maya. So I want to jump straight to the topic of aging for us, and I'll kick it off with a question, which is, as you've experienced life, what are or have been the moments you recall where you're experiencing certain things, or you're receiving certain opportunities, not receiving certain opportunities, especially as it relates to education, and it relates to your career, where you're like, okay, this is because of my age.
Yeah.
And the forefront of this decision, or the forefront of me receiving this opportunity or not receiving this opportunity, is because of my age. Even though it may not be said to my face, it's like an underlying...
It's really interesting because I, up until this moment, have never really thought about whether I haven't received opportunities because of my age. Typically because I think that, old saying, when I tell people I'm 53, they don't really believe it. And so they think I'm younger than what I am. So that, that stereotype of Black doesn't crack has sort of held me well throughout the years. I haven't, in my at this stage, I haven't felt as much of that discrimination about my age as I did actually when I was younger. But the same thing that I think holds true from then until now. When I'm not receiving positions, so for instance, this summer I have interviewed for a number of education positions, and working in DEI, and I have not landed one of those positions, any of them. And so I have to wonder, the things that come to mind are the same things. Is it my age? Is it my race? I never know if those are the things. But recently, one of the things that I'm keenly aware of, but I'm not sure if it is a hindrance. The two things that I'm aware of is either my hair or my weight. And I do wonder if those are things that are contributing to not receiving positions. So I do think in education, so many of the teachers are older. They are in their 50s or they're in their 40s. And so I find that in this particular field that it doesn't seem to be as much of a hindrance, I think, as it would be in other fields.
There are two things you touched on that I want to kind of dive a little deeper into. The first one was when you mentioned the perceptions you've gotten in terms of aging, how drastic it's been when you were younger compared to now. And hopefully I recall correctly, when you were younger, it was more like your age was a bigger deal compared to now. So in what ways was it a bigger deal when you were younger?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was the assumption of being inexperienced. When I was younger, it was definitely, okay, does she have the experience to do the job, but also is she qualified? So I find that when I was younger, that was really, there was that intersectionality of my identity of, not being able to really suss out whether or not it's my age, my gender, or my race.
Yeah, I was actually going to, that was the second thing I wanted to dive a little more on. When you mentioned, like with those positions, wondering like, oh, is it your age? I guess my question when it comes to that is, like, what do you think about the constant pressure on us as women to always like be perfect? Because you did mention, in doing those interviews, you are wondering like, is it my locks?
Yeah. Right.
Or is it my weight? And when you mentioned that, I automatically thought about like this societal thing, regardless of what society you are in this world. It's like, as a woman and even as a girl, like, it starts when we're girls, you have to be perfect. And it's like perfect that society has put on us, not a perfect that we choose for ourselves. And so it's like, what do you think about the constant pressure on us as women to always be perfect, especially as it relates to quote unquote maintaining your youth?
Right. I think that's a great question, because when I think about what's really interesting, my mom is 93, and one of the things she always tells me is that, it's so important to take care of your body, and it's so important to, take care of yourself. But she is very specific about making sure you take care of your body.
Now that I'm not a social media person, and now that I am on social media, and even, just seeing ads, whether I'm watching TV, I'm walking down the street, on my phone, whatever it is, there's always ads about preserving our youth, and trying to preserve our youth. To me, it makes it seem like aging is this like disgusting process when it's not, because I see it as like a, circle of life. For every living thing, something else goes, and when I think about like my 20s, and this like pressure of having it all together in your 20s. I'm more so like, okay, I'm in my 20s, but I'm experiencing life for the first time like everybody else. And how am I going to feel if I'm like, let's say if I'm 53 like you are, and I'm always trying to just be as young as possible. There's no way. Like, eventually something is going to happen. And then trying to be in my 50s and treating myself as if I'm in my 20s, I'm going to take care of my body, like you mentioned, and take care of me as best as I can for whatever stage I'm in life. But saying it is so much easier than doing it, because it's hard to see examples, and the examples you see of women really accepting the aging process and just how wonderful it is. They're deemed as like it's almost like this like the women that do accept the aging process, it's like a what's wrong with her. Like, she has wrinkles, why is she okay with her wrinkles? Or she's not afraid of saying, you know what, like, my body is achy, or I am experiencing menopause, or I'm older and I chose not to have children, and I'm okay with that. That doesn't make me any less of a woman for that. Or like the women that do stand up and be like, it's okay for us to age, from businesses to media to other women are just like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be
you could be fighting the aging process, not leaning into it. And I mean, you're right, I see that a lot where there is this the immediate perception, and also with people who are of my in my generation, there is this kind of you have to fight the aging process. And the thing is that what we now know about the aging process is so different than what we understood about the aging process when we were in our 20s and in our 30s. The information that we have now is so expansive. And the other part is, that like you said, media is such a big shaping force, no matter what age we are. When I was your age, love being able to say that, but when I was your age, it wasn't social media. It was, in the grocery store, and you're seeing the magazines, you're seeing Vogue and, Glamour and all of these magazines, and you're like, you don't see women who look like you on the cover. And so how do I, who am I around, and how do I make sure that societal piece doesn't impact the way that I see myself? The fact that there's a beauty standard that has been set particularly and purposefully to make sure that women of color don't value themselves, they don't see themselves as beautiful, that they do, pour in millions of dollars into, the beauty industry and into, the whole fashion industry to keep that process of aging, to keep that, standard of beauty. That is one that was created to be purposefully unattainable. Even with my students, even with my 17 or 18-year-olds, they're struggling with how they feel about themselves, because now it's magazines and what you see on TV, and then you open your Instagram and you're seeing these images of people who are supposedly living their best lives, and happiness comes at 30, and that isn't the lived reality of so many people that I know. That the idea that when you get to 50, that's your magic number, and you'll own yourself, and you'll be at at home in your body. All of those things are just, for lack of a better word, it's just propaganda. It's a difficult balance, and I think that as I get older, that concept of being, exercising mindfulness, of being, reflective, do some other things and find some other ways of making myself whole.
Yes, I completely agree. It actually, all that you mentioned right now, kind of reminds me of something that I've been trying to implement and something that I've been trying to remind myself, which is we're all a work in progress, and there's nothing wrong with that. And even there's so many people, from celebrities to just people we know in our own personal lives, where they tell us, I've accomplished this goal, but I still don't feel whole.
Right.
And so I think, especially when it comes to us as women and aging, truly learning who you are, and not just learning who you are, but accepting that, number one, we're always a work in progress, and that work in progress is very internal.
Yeah.
And as we get older, it seems like, regardless of what cultural background we're from, we're viewed as worthless, as less important, less worthy, less beautiful, just completely less, as if we're no longer whole, or as if we're no longer human. It's like, oh, this part of you is quote unquote getting uglier. So if you are uglier, then you're not a human anymore.
Right. Like patriarchy and how that has been a part of what shapes the value of aging. Because, of course, when a man has his gray hair and he's aging, oh, he's a zaddy. But yeah, right? And then when women are doing the same thing and they're getting their gray hair, and there's no zaddy for women. I am constantly, I'm both amused and annoyed that is, part of what is, what the patriarchy is kind of shoving down our throats.
Are you afraid of aging?
That's a great question. At one point I would have said no. But now that I see, I see the importance of being physically active. One of the things that scares me about aging is how painful physically painful it is. That part is no bueno.
Yeah. I never even thought about that. I mean, I try to be as respectful to my body as possible when it comes to what I eat, being active, etc. But knowing how painful it is, it's always interesting, because what you actually experience, no matter how much you're warned or you prepare for, you're never truly prepared for it.
I was going to say, one of my friend's moms, one of the things she always said was, there was a certain age where she just became invisible. Going to the grocery store or being out and about, she was like, men don't even look at me. It's as if they don't even see me. And I was like, wow, that is... I thought that would be liberating, but what she was saying is that, you miss that attention. You miss, seeing someone kind of, to get that double take. And I was like,
that's so interesting.
Yeah, the aging process and how you will age and the respect you have, and you'll see as you age will be different. So
I learned some things today. So especially what you said about your friend missing the double takes, it's so interesting, because for me, when that happens, I genuinely get so scared, where I'm like, if I say something bad might happen to me. If I don't say something bad might happen to me. I've had it be both sides, so it's interesting to me that she misses that. Or I want to ask, what would you say to Maya in her 20s, in her 30s, in her 40s, in regards to aging, besides take care of your body? If you could like go back, or if there is a way where you could tell her something when it comes to the aging process, or when it comes to the perceptions and society and the realities we face as we age, what would you tell Maya?
And this is the same thing. Yeah, I would tell myself now, but I love yourself. And I know that's like, what? But
no, that is something I say every episode. Like, you have to know yourself, and knowing yourself starts with respecting and loving yourself.
So respect yourself. I mean, that is where the love comes from. When you say, okay, not the standards over here, but what are the standards? What are the things that I hold near and dear to me? And how do I respect myself? And because it is the loving yourself at whatever age that is going to hold you in good stead as you go through this,
And that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this topic, because a lot of the girls that are listening are younger, and at a time where being younger, it's still highly valued. It's still supposed to be the norm, but it's just so rampant compared to before because of advertising, because of social media. There's so many stories you see on social media about like this 20-something-year-old goes and does Botox and does fillers and does this and does that, and it's like, and then later on when they're in their 30s, they regret it. So I'm so glad we were able to have this conversation. I've taken so much from it personally. And of course, I have to say thank you so much, Maya, for your time, for your presence, for existing.
Say to you.
You thank you. See, I think that's like one of the most wonderful things about technology advancing, is just how more of us as women are able to talk about like real shit that we face. And one of those things is aging, and I don't want it to be a stigma. Aging shouldn't be a stigma. If being youthful is the norm, then so should aging, because aging is the actual norm.
Because we're all doing it.
Your face doesn't show it, your neck will. If your neck doesn't show it, your chest will. If your chest doesn't show it,
your hands.
But yeah, I do want to give you a moment, Maya. If there's anything you want to say to the girls, this is like your Sae girly late night spotlight moment. Any plugs you want to share? Let them know what's happening, what's going to happen with you, things like that.
You know what? I am so glad to be a part of this conversation, to be able to hopefully demystify the whole, what aging is, how it looks, how it feels, and that, like you said, aging is the norm. Everybody has to do it, and when we find our own ways of doing it gracefully, to find our own ways of being, actively engaged in the aging process, it's like it becomes something that's not so scary. Thank you so much for having me. I have to say, I appreciate how generous you were with your time. I appreciate you even thinking about me as far as part of this conversation. I am very honored. I'm very honored. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And that's it for tonight's episode. If you've enjoyed this episode or you're enjoying the podcast, go ahead and tap on the subscribe button and leave me a review. You can also find me and Talks with Sae on Instagram at Talks with Sae. Thank you, my girlie, for joining me, and more importantly, thank you for existing. Until next time, self above else.